Hi and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. I've never been the kind of guy to air my dirty laundry. I've always been a private person, someone who deals with his own issues behind closed doors. But I'm at a point now where I feel like I'm losing my mind and I just need to get this out to tell someone, anyone, even if it's just a bunch of strangers on the internet. Maybe I am crazy. You can be the judge of that. The story, I guess, starts 4 years ago. That's when I met her. Let's call her Sarah. It's not her real name, of course, but it feels wrong to use her real one, like I'm betraying a confidence that maybe, just maybe, I'm misinterpreting. 4 years. It feels like a lifetime and a blink of an eye all at once. When we met, it was one of those cliché things. Mutual friends, a barbecue, the sun was setting, and she just glowed. She had this laugh that could cut through any noise, and her eyes, man, her eyes were like nothing I'd ever seen before. They were a deep, soulful brown, and they seemed to see right through me. She had a daughter from a previous relationship, a sweet little girl named Lily who was about 3 at the time. I'd never dated a woman with a child before, and to be honest, it was a little daunting. But the way Sarah was with her, so patient and loving, it just made me fall for her even harder. We clicked instantly. The conversation flowed so easily, and we found we had so much in common. Our sense of humor, our taste in music, our dreams for the future. It felt like I had known her my whole life. The first few months were a whirlwind of passion and excitement. We were inseparable. We'd spend hours just talking, exploring each other's minds, our bodies, our souls. I met Lily, and to my relief, she took to me right away. We'd build forts in the living room, have tea parties with her stuffed animals, and I'd read her bedtime stories until she fell asleep in my arms. I was falling in love, not just with Sarah, but with the little family we were creating. It wasn't long before we decided to move in together. It just felt right. We found a small house with a little backyard for Lily to play in, and we started building a life. It was perfect, or at least it felt that way. But there was always this little voice in the back of my mind, a tiny, persistent whisper of doubt. You see, a couple of years before I met Sarah, I had a really bad experience. I was with a girl, let's call her Emily, who completely shattered my trust. She was a master manipulator, a pathological liar. She had me believing I was the crazy one, that I was imagining things, that my insecurities were the problem. It all came to a head when I found out she'd been cheating on me for months, with multiple people. The discovery almost broke me. It left me with this deep-seated paranoia, a constant fear that I was being played, that nothing was as it seemed. I went to therapy for a while, and it helped. I learned to recognize the red flags, to trust my gut, but the scars remained. And so, even in the midst of my happiness with Sarah, that little voice would whisper. It would tell me she was too good to be true, that she was a honeypot sent to mess with my head, to hurt me in the worst way possible. I know it sounds crazy. Why would anyone do that? But after Emily, my perception of people, of relationships, was warped. I tried to ignore it. I really did. For the first couple of years with Sarah, it worked. Our life was good, we were happy. I loved Lily as if she were my own, and Sarah and I were a team. We supported each other, we laughed together, we made plans for the future. And then we had a baby. Our son, Leo. He was born a little over a year ago, and he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Holding him in my arms for the first time, I felt a love so profound it was almost overwhelming. I looked at Sarah holding our son, and I thought, this is it, this is my life, and it's perfect. For a while, the little voice of paranoia went silent. I was too consumed by the joy and exhaustion of being a new dad. The late-night feedings, the diaper changes, the endless cycle of burping and rocking, it left little room for anything else. But then, as Leo got a little older and we settled into a new routine, the whispers started again. They were faint at first, easy to dismiss. But they grew louder, more insistent. It started with little things, a flicker in her eyes when I asked about her day, a hesitation in her voice when she told me where she'd been. Things that most people would probably brush off, but for me, with my history, they were like tiny alarm bells. I started to get this feeling, this deep, unsettling feeling in the pit of my stomach, that something was wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it. There was no concrete evidence, just a series of small, almost imperceptible shifts in her behavior. She was more distant, more guarded. The easy intimacy we once shared felt strained. It was like there was a wall between us, and I didn't know how it got there. I tried talking to her about it, but she would just shut me down. She'd say I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my past issues onto her. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was just a damaged person who was incapable of trusting anyone, but I couldn't shake the feeling. It was like a splinter in my mind, a constant nagging irritation. And then about 18 months ago, I did something I'm not proud of. I was in a moment of weakness, of pure, unadulterated paranoia. I went into her phone settings and I turned on her Google Maps location history. I told myself it was for her safety, that with a new baby, it was good to know where she was. But I knew deep down that I was lying to myself. I was looking for something, I just didn't know what. For a long time I didn't check it. The guilt of what I'd done was enough to keep me from looking. I tried to convince myself that I had just imagined everything, that our life was as perfect as it seemed on the surface. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. It was a constant, low-level hum of anxiety, a feeling that I was standing on a precipice, and the ground was about to give way. And then a few months ago, she started a new job. It was a good opportunity, more money, better hours. I was happy for her, I really was. But her new job seemed to coincide with a new level of secrecy. She was working late more often, going out for work dinners that she never used to. And the little things, the inconsistencies in her stories, they started to pile up. That's when I finally gave in to the temptation. I opened up the Google Maps history, and what I found. It didn't make any sense. There were trips, sometimes an hour north of our house, to a random shop or a residential address I'd never seen before, places she had never mentioned. There were visits to a strange market that we never go to on days when she was supposed to be at work. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was planning a surprise for me. Maybe she was helping out a friend. But she never said anything. And when I would ask her about her day, she would leave these trips out, giving me a condensed, edited version of her movements. This went on for at least 2 months. My paranoia went into overdrive. I started to see signs everywhere. A look from a stranger, a whispered conversation between friends that would stop when I entered the room. I started to feel like people knew something I didn't, that they were all in on some secret that I was the last to know. It was like I was living in a play and everyone had a script but me. The feeling of being an outsider in my own life was suffocating. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Was I going crazy? Or was I the only one who could see the truth? This feeling of isolation was a heavy weight on my chest, a constant pressure that made it hard to breathe. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, and the slightest gust of wind could send me plummeting into the abyss. The world around me seemed to be conspiring to keep me in the dark, and the silence of those who I thought were my friends was deafening. Every smile seemed like a mask, every conversation a carefully constructed lie. I was a prisoner in my own home, a stranger in my own life. And the more I tried to break free, the tighter the chains of uncertainty became. It was a living nightmare, and I was the only one who couldn't wake up. The constant hum of anxiety that had become my new normal was a relentless companion. It was there when I woke up in the morning, a knot in my stomach that tightened with each passing hour. It was there when I tried to sleep at night, a cacophony of whispers and what-ifs that kept me tossing and turning. The Google Maps history was a Pandora's box that I couldn't seem to close. Every time I told myself I wouldn't look, I would find myself drawn back to it, my fingers moving with a will of their own, my heart pounding in my chest as I traced the lines of her secret journeys. The trips to the north became a focal point of my obsession. The little blue dot on the map, a digital representation of the woman I loved, moving in a direction that was a complete mystery to me. An hour north. What was there? A friend's house, a secret lover's hideaway. A clandestine meeting spot for a double life I knew nothing about. The possibilities were endless, and each one was more terrifying than the last. I would spend hours staring at the satellite images of these locations. A small, unassuming shop on a quiet street. A suburban house with a manicured lawn and a two-car garage. a bustling market filled with people I didn't know. I would zoom in, trying to catch a glimpse of her car, of anything that would give me a clue. But there was nothing. Just the cold, impersonal images of a world that was completely alien to me. The rational part of my brain, the part that hadn't been completely consumed by paranoia, tried to find logical explanations. Maybe she was buying a gift for me, something special for our anniversary or my birthday. But months went by and no gift ever materialized. Maybe she was visiting a sick relative, someone she didn't want me to worry about. But Sarah was always so open with me about her family. It didn't make sense that she would keep something like that a secret. The more I tried to rationalize her behavior, the more I realized how little sense it made. And the more I realized that, the more I felt the tendrils of my old paranoia wrapping themselves around me, squeezing the air from my lungs. I started to see the world through a distorted lens, a filter of suspicion and distrust. Every late night at the office, every unanswered text message, every time she angled her phone away from me, it was all fuel for the fire that was raging in my mind. I became a detective in my own home, a silent observer of the woman I once thought I knew better than myself. I would watch her when she was on her computer, trying to see what she was typing, what she was looking at. But she was always so careful, so quick to close tabs and clear her history. It was like she knew I was watching, like she was one step ahead of me at all times. The house that was once my sanctuary, a place of love and laughter, now felt like a prison. The silence between us was deafening, a heavy, suffocating blanket of unspoken words and unanswered questions. I would look at her across the dinner table, and I would see a stranger. A beautiful, enigmatic stranger who held a part of herself back from me, a part that I was desperate to understand. The emotional toll of this constant suspicion was immense. I was irritable, I was distant, I was not the man I wanted to be. I was short with Lily, impatient with Leo. I was a ghost in my own life, a shadow of the happy, carefree person I used to be. The joy had been sucked out of me, replaced by annoying, all-consuming anxiety. I was so caught up in my own internal turmoil that I didn't notice the other changes at first. They were subtle, insidious things that happened so gradually I almost didn't see them. But when I did, the full weight of my situation came crashing down on me. I was paying the bills online one day, a mundane task that I had always taken care of. But when I tried to log in to the utility company's website, my password didn't work. I tried again and again, but it was no use. I was locked out. I called the company, and after a series of security questions, they told me that the password had been changed. And not only that, but my name had been removed from the account. It was now solely in Sarah's name. I was stunned. I couldn't understand why she would do that without telling me. We had always shared everything, our finances, our responsibilities. This was a unilateral decision, a secret change that I was never meant to know about. It was a small thing, a utility bill, but it felt like a betrayal. It was a clear message that she was creating a life separate from me, a life that I was not a part of. That discovery opened the floodgates. I started looking for other things, other signs that she was pulling away from me, that she was building a life without me. And I found them. Passwords on my phone that I didn't set, apps that I didn't download. It was like my own personal device had been compromised, turned into a tool for her to keep her secrets. And then there were the texts, or rather the lack of them. Her phone was a black hole of information. There was no history, no call logs, no saved messages. It was wiped clean, a blank slate that told no stories. She was covering her tracks, meticulously erasing any evidence of her communications. It was the work of someone who had something to hide, someone who was an expert at deception. The Emily-sized scar on my soul began to throb with a familiar, agonizing pain. The parallels were undeniable. The gaslighting, the secretiveness, the feeling that I was the one who was going crazy. It was all happening again. But this time it was so much worse. This time there was so much more at stake. We had a life together, a home, a son. The thought of losing all of that, of our little family being torn apart, was a pain that was almost too much to bear. And yet, I couldn't ignore what was happening. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. The evidence was piling up, a mountain of small, seemingly insignificant details that, when put together, painted a very ugly picture. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making. I had created a life with a woman who I now suspected was living a lie. And the worst part was I had no one to talk to about it. I couldn't confide in my friends because what would I say? I think my girlfriend is cheating on me because she changed the password on the gas bill. They would think I was insane. I couldn't talk to my family because they loved Sarah. They saw her as the perfect partner for me, the woman who had finally made me happy. The truth, or what I suspected to be the truth, would shatter their image of her, of us. And so I was alone. Alone with my thoughts, my fears, my suspicions. The weight of it all was crushing me, and I didn't know how much longer I could bear it. The happy facade that we presented to the world was a lie, and I was the only one who knew it. And the more I tried to uncover the truth, the deeper I fell into a rabbit hole of my own paranoia, a place where reality and suspicion blurred into one, and I could no longer tell the difference between what was real and what was a figment of my tortured imagination. The days bled into one another, each one a carbon copy of the last, a suffocating routine of pretense and paranoia. I would wake up in the morning, the knot of anxiety already a familiar presence in my stomach. I would smile at Sarah, kiss her goodbye as she left for work, and then the moment the door closed behind her, the mask would fall and I would be left alone with my demons. The house, once a symbol of our love and our life together, now felt like a gilded cage. Every object, every piece of furniture, was a reminder of what I stood to lose. The photographs on the mantelpiece, capturing moments of shared laughter and genuine happiness, now seemed to mock me, a cruel testament to a past that felt like a lifetime ago. I would wander through the empty rooms, the silence amplifying the frantic thrumming of my own heart. I was a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the ghost of a relationship that I feared was already dead. The urge to check the Google Maps history was a constant battle, a war I waged with myself every single day. Most days I lost. I would find myself hunched over my phone, my thumb hovering over the app, my breath held in anticipation. And then, with a sense of both dread and perverse excitement, I would click. The little blue dot, a beacon of my obsession, would trace her path, and I would follow it, my mind a whirlwind of speculation and fear. The trips to the north continued, a regular pilgrimage to a place that held the key to her secrets. But there was a new addition to her clandestine travels, a new location that sent a fresh wave of ice-cold dread through my veins, a small, nondescript motel on the outskirts of town. She would go there in the middle of the day on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and she would stay for an hour, sometimes two. The first time I saw it, I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All the air rushed out of my lungs and I was left gasping for breath, the room spinning around me. A motel. There was no innocent explanation for that. No surprise party, no sick relative, no secret shopping trip. A motel in the middle of a weekday had only one meaning, and it was a meaning that I had been trying to deny, a truth that I had been desperately trying to avoid. But now it was staring me in the face, a blinking, undeniable dot on a digital map. The pain was a physical thing, a sharp, searing agony that spread from my chest to every corner of my body. It was the pain of betrayal, of a trust so completely shattered that it could never be put back together again. The woman I loved, the mother of my child, was cheating on me. The thought was a relentless mantra, a drumbeat of despair that echoed in the hollow chambers of my heart. I wanted to scream, to smash things, to lash out at the injustice of it all. But I was paralyzed, frozen by a grief so profound that it stole my voice and my strength. I went through the rest of the day in a daze, a zombie-like automaton going through the motions of life. I picked up Lily from school, I played with Leo, I made dinner. But I was not really there. I was a million miles away, lost in a sea of pain and confusion. When Sarah came home that evening, I couldn't even look at her. I couldn't bear to see the face of the woman who had so completely and utterly destroyed me. She asked me what was wrong, why I was so quiet, and for a moment I was tempted to tell her everything, to throw the evidence in her face, to demand an explanation, to watch her squirm and lie. But what good would it do? She would deny it, of course. She would say I was crazy, that I was misinterpreting things, that the Google Maps history was wrong. She would turn it all around on me, just like Emily had. And I would be left with nothing but my word against hers, my paranoia against her plausible deniability. No, I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof, something that she couldn't talk her way out of. And so I continued my silent investigation, my descent into a personal hell that was all of my own making. The utility bills, the changed passwords, the deleted texts, it all made sense now. She was erasing me from her life, one digital footprint at a time. She was creating a new identity, a new reality, one that did not include me. The thought was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. She was not just cheating on me, she was planning to leave me. She was building a new life for herself, and I was just an obstacle in her way. The paranoia that had been my constant companion for so long now felt like a righteous anger. I was no longer just a victim of my own insecurities. I was a man who was being systematically and cruelly deceived, and I was not going to let her get away with it. I started to dig deeper, to look for more clues, more evidence of her betrayal. I went through her credit card statements, her bank records, anything that I could get my hands on, and I found what I was looking for. There were charges for hotel rooms that matched the dates and locations of her motel visits. There were restaurant bills for two, in places we had never been to together. There were purchases from stores that she would never shop in, for things that she would never buy. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture that was emerging was a grotesque and heartbreaking caricature of the life I thought we had. The woman I had loved and trusted for 4 years was a stranger to me. She was a liar, a cheat, a manipulator. She had taken my heart and my life, and she had trampled all over them with a callous indifference that was almost too much to bear. And in the midst of all this there was Leo, our son, the innocent victim in this whole sordid mess. What would happen to him? How could I protect him from the fallout of his mother's betrayal? The thought of our family being torn apart, of my son growing up in a broken home, was a pain that was even greater than the pain of her infidelity. I was trapped. If I confronted her, I would lose everything. My family, my home, my son. But if I said nothing, I would be living a lie, a hollow shell of a man who had sacrificed his own self-respect for the sake of a comfortable illusion. The weight of this decision was a crushing burden, a cross that I had to bear alone. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, with two paths stretching out before me, each one leading to a different kind of hell, and I had no idea which one to take. The once bright and hopeful future that I had envisioned for us was now a dark and desolate landscape, a wasteland of broken promises and shattered dreams. And I was lost in the middle of it, a lone traveler with no map and no compass, just the cold, hard certainty that my life would never be the same again. The house had become a mausoleum, a silent tomb where our love lay buried. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the ghosts of 1,000 unasked questions. We were two strangers living under the same roof, two actors in a play that had long since lost its plot. I moved through the days in a fog of grief and anger, a walking wound that refused to heal. The pain was a constant companion, a dull, throbbing ache in my chest that was a perpetual reminder of her betrayal. I would look at her, and all I could see was the lies, the deceit, the casual cruelty of her infidelity. The love I once felt for her had curdled into a bitter cocktail of resentment and disgust. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave. The thought of a life without Leo, of only seeing him on weekends and holidays, was a torment that was even greater than the torment of living with her. And so, I stayed. I played the part of the loving partner, the doting father, the man who was completely oblivious to the fact that his world was falling apart. It was a role that was slowly but surely killing me. The pretense was exhausting, a constant drain on my already depleted emotional resources. I was a hollow man, a shell of my former self, going through the motions of a life that no longer felt like my own. The silence between us was a living thing, a malevolent presence that filled the empty spaces in our conversations, that hung heavy in the air between us. We would eat our meals in silence. We would watch television in silence. We would go to bed in silence. The only sounds in our house were the innocent babbling of our son, a stark and heartbreaking contrast to the deafening silence of our dying relationship. I found myself retreating further and further into my own world, a world of suspicion and paranoia, a world where the only thing that was real was the pain. The Google Maps history was my Bible, my sacred text, the only source of truth in a life that was built on a foundation of lies. I would study it for hours, poring over the details of her secret life, trying to piece together the fragments of her betrayal. The motel visits had become a regular occurrence, a weekly ritual of infidelity that she carried out with a brazen disregard for me, for our family, for the life we had built together. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't go on like this, living a lie, slowly being eaten away from the inside out. But what could I do? The thought of confronting her was still a terrifying prospect. I knew how it would play out. The denials, the accusations, the gaslighting. She would twist everything around, make me out to be the bad guy, the paranoid, controlling partner who was trying to ruin her life. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was crazy. The thought was a recurring whisper in the back of my mind, a seed of doubt that she had planted long ago, a seed that had now taken root and was threatening to consume me. But then I would look at the evidence. The hotel bills, the restaurant receipts, the deleted texts. It was all there in black and white, a cold, hard indictment of her guilt. I was not crazy. I was a man who had been pushed to the brink by the woman he loved, and I was done being a victim. I decided that I would confront her. But not in anger, not in a fit of rage. I would do it calmly, methodically. I would lay out the evidence piece by piece, and I would watch her try to talk her way out of it. I spent days preparing for the confrontation, gathering my evidence, rehearsing my words. I was like a lawyer preparing for a trial that would decide the fate of my life. The night I chose to confront her was a Tuesday. She had just come home from one of her work dinners, her face flushed, her eyes bright with a false manufactured cheerfulness. She came over to me, tried to kiss me, but I turned my head away. She looked at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with a feigned concern that made my stomach turn. I took a deep breath and I began. I laid out the evidence one piece at a time. The Google Maps history, the hotel bills, the credit card statements. I watched her face as I spoke, and I saw the mask of innocence begin to crack. The color drained from her cheeks, her eyes darted around the room looking for an escape. When I was finished, there was a long, heavy silence. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her face a mixture of shock and fear. And then she did something that I never expected. She started to cry. Not the crocodile tears of a liar caught in a lie, but the genuine, heartbreaking sobs of a woman who was truly and deeply sorry. And then she told me everything. The affair had started a few months after Leo was born. She was feeling lost, overwhelmed, and alone. She had met a man at work, someone who had paid attention to her, who had made her feel seen. It had started as an innocent friendship, but it had quickly turned into something more. She told me that she had tried to end it several times, but she had been weak, she had been afraid. She told me that she still loved me, that she had never stopped loving me, and she begged me to forgive her. I listened to her confession, and I felt nothing. The anger, the pain, the grief, it was all gone. All that was left was a vast, empty numbness. I looked at the woman who was sitting in front of me, the woman who had been my life for the past 4 years, and I felt nothing. The love I had once felt for her was gone, replaced by a cold, hard indifference. I told her that I needed time to think, that I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. And then I walked out of the house and I didn't look back. I drove for hours with no destination in mind. I just needed to get away, to escape the suffocating confines of my broken life. And as I drove, I thought about everything that had happened, about the lies, the betrayal, the pain. and I realized that I had a choice to make. I could let this destroy me, I could let it turn me into a bitter, angry man who was incapable of trusting anyone, or I could choose to heal. I could choose to move on, to build a new life for myself, for my son. It would not be easy. The road ahead would be long and difficult. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to create, and I was not going to let her take that away from me. I had lost my love, my family, my home, but I had not lost myself. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Thank you for listening this story. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Click like and subscribe to the Reddit Whispers for more.